Hi, I'm Sandra.
Hi, I'm Triffany, and we're friends. Every time we get together, we have these crazy, awesome insights about manifesting, life, synchronicity.
And one day I said, it's too bad we didn't record this because somebody out there could have benefited from hearing this.
And that's how this began.
We never know what we're going to talk about, but when we do and the magic happens, we want to share it with you.
I'm a little tired today, to be honest. I don't know if it's just having the kids home all week and adjusting the schedule, or I know when I'm out of my routine, I don't drink enough water. I don't eat at regular interval. So my energy's just, I could use a nap.
Yeah. Well, and the weather doesn't help either. I mean, it's so gloomy out.
I know. I did get out yesterday and go for a little hike while we had a little bit of sun, but that wind was cold.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing?
I know, it's getting to the point where it's getting to the point where I don't want to get out of bed. I'm like, oh, it's dark, it's cold. It's humans are not supposed to be up in this weather.
I don't think we are. I think we're supposed to have some sort of like hibernation period that we've trained ourselves out of. I'm with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How are you? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was nice. It was very nice. I learned a new term called Friendsgiving.
Yes.
I had not heard of that term before.
No.
Yeah. It's like, oh, when you get together with, your friends for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I guess I'm having a Friendsgiving right now.
That's awesome. Good.
Yeah. So it was fantastic. I ate so much. This is the first, I like to eat, but this is the first time I ever ate so much I didn't have room for dessert. Like I walked around, I had some hot tea, I was doing everything I could think of to like make space for dessert.
That's awesome. You couldn't do it, huh?
No. And I'm not a what do you call it? A purger. So
right. No.
That wasn't going to happen.
No. And dessert, the nice thing about the desserts is that they do keep, it's they didn't go anywhere. You had some later at some point, I'm sure.
Well, no, because it wasn't at my house. So I was at somebody else's house. So I basically had to just say, oh, well, at least I didn't have any sugar.
There you go. Yeah. Make it look like an intentional choice.
Exactly, right? I chose not to have sugar.
Yes. No, I'm being so disciplined right now. This is good.
Yeah. How about you? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was unremarkable. We had my mom was out of town and dog sat her dog, and then my son picked up the shift at work because it's double time. They pay him double time to work, and so
good for him. That's smart.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't blame him at all, especially with a minimum wage job. So we didn't really do anything. We played some games and hung out while he was here, and then when he went to work, he worked the closing shift. So my daughter and I hung out, and yeah, no, it was completely non-eventful. I think we might have taken a nap in the middle of the day.
Oh, nice.
I know. Like, really, in all honesty, how often do you, as a single mom, get an uneventful day? Like, that is almost remarkable.
With your kids around.
Right, exactly. With your kids around. That's almost remarkable because it's unremarkable, like that's a real gift. So
right.
Yeah, no, it was good. Yeah. And then over the weekend, I went up to. Have you ever done the Castle Rock hike? Do you know where?
No.
Do you know where Castle Rock is? It's between.
Yeah. There's a nice mall down there, right?
Yeah, the outlet malls are down there. Yeah. Well, it's named the town is named Castle Rock because there's a huge rock on the top of mountain that looks like the top of a castle. So they have a little path that wraps around the hill to get you up to the top, and I had never done it. I 25 minutes away, and I've never done it. So I went ahead and went with a friend on yesterday, Sunday, and did that, and that was really nice. It was good to just get out and not think about holiday plans, food, shopping, just go be with the rocks and the hills and the grass and the coyotes. Well, I was up there late. It was 10 a.m. by the time we started hiking. I don't usually start hiking that late, but to your earlier point, it's dark and cold now. And the coyotes were still baying. I couldn't believe it. They were really active. We saw all kinds of evidence of them being up there. So it was kind of cool. It was good to be out and get some fresh air and see something I hadn't seen before.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so not a hiker. I mean, I don't mind hiking. I love hiking, but I would not even consider 10 a.m. to be late. That's how not a hiker I am. I'm like, 10 a.m. is late?
Well, it didn't used to be late. It used to be the smart time to start because it's colder in the mountains. So even in the summer, if you're going to start, a 9 or 10 a.m. start made sense. But now we have so many people that the parking lots for trailheads are closed, that the traffic up there is awful. So, I mean, when we did our 14er, we left here at 4:30 a.m. to get up there, and we still couldn't fit in the parking lot. We still had a good half a mile away from the trailhead before we could even start hiking the 14er. So when we hike during the summer, we're up and at it early. I mean, we're on the highway no later than 5:30 or 6.
Holy cow. Yeah, you know what? I think in my old age, I'm kind of liking just like sleeping in and just staying home and just relaxing and not getting up that dark 30 to go climb a mountain.
That doesn't sound like fun to you? I'm a weirdo. You know what?
I would do it like just to do it, just to say, oh yeah, let's do it. But I can't see it being a regular part of my life. I mean, I don't even get up anymore early in the mornings to work out. I mean, I remember I used to wake up at like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to work out before the kids got up. Now it's like, why am I doing this to myself?
You were so diligent about it too. You're like, well, why wouldn't I? That's when I have.
Oh my gosh, I was the definition of discipline.
I know. I remember at one point, you and I were having a conversation. This was early on in our relationship. So a couple of years ago. And I was saying something about Peyton. She had said something, I want to work out or learn a language or whatever that thing was. You were like, I don't get that. Why do you need to want to do it? If you have to do it, if it's good for you, you just do it. And I was in such admiration of that attitude of like, just do it. Like, it's just the simplest. You just check it off the list. And I'm like, maybe I'm making this way too much of a struggle to like struggle for the desire. And then with the desire struggle to get it into my routine. And so it's really funny to hear you years later now go, no way, I'm sleeping in.
No, and that has happened to me a lot of times. It just seems like the more spiritual I get, the less discipline I get, which is kind of weird. And so I've always kind of felt like, how do I balance this? Because I introduce, meditation in the mornings and readings and things like that. And I find myself not getting up to work out. And then I be unable to close my jeans, and I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta start working out again. And then I get really disciplined and work out, and then it seemed like there was no room for meditation, and I kind of fall off the spirituality wagon. And so they don't seem to be able to coexist with me, just being disciplined and almost rigid and kind of spiritual and like, well, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. It's okay. There's no big deal. In the end, we all end up ashes anyway, that kind of thing.
I do get that. I think that's why a lot of people have moved toward things like yoga and Pilates and Tai Chi and sort of things that are kind of both meditative and exercise, because there's something about, staying present, listening to the body and the breath in the moment that you're exercising. But I've always thought the same thing about running. I would love to want to run. I cannot stand running, but I can see how that would be meditative. I can see how, you kind of get in a zone, and if you're using it that way, it could be. Right.
Yeah. A lot of people say that they get into a zone, and I'm like, wow, really? I've never gotten to that point. I've gotten to the point of thinking I needed a paramedic, but never in the zone.
When you're hunched over breathing, you're just trying
yes.
to
oh so the hardest thing about being in the military is our PT test, and and it's only a mile and a half, which is really not that big a deal. But if you're not a runner, you might as well be running a marathon. You're just like, oh my God, my heart's just gonna pound so fast. It's just gonna be like, I'm done.
Tap out. Somebody come in. Where's my teammate? I get it though. I do, because I will, if I have to make the choice. Now, I actually have a pretty good situation now where I am working out while the kids do homework and stuff. So there, I have a chunk of time when I'm not going to, because they're old enough now. They don't need me right there with them. So that is now my workout time. So I've got my meditation and my journaling in the morning, and then I've got my workout time in the late afternoon, which works for me and my adrenals and everything I've got going on physically. But I know, well, as you know, times and situations change, and there's, as they grow up, as they get out of the house, you know, whatever comes up next, if this, you know, when my talk show gets picked up and things like that start to happen, I might, if I really want to prioritize that workout, I might really end up needing to put it in the morning, in which case I am, like you, making a choice. And my spiritual practice will take precedence over my physical practice any day of the week. I learned my lesson about that with the meningitis all those years ago. Like, I'm never, ever, ever giving up my spiritual practice again, ever.
Yeah. You know, for me, for what I find for myself though, it's not so much a matter of time, because you know, I've figured out a way to make time for both. It's the mindset. It's you know, being spiritual isn't compatible with being disciplined. Like, this has to happen in this certain way at this certain time on this certain day. It just seems, for me anyway, it's incompatible. It's, you know, spirituality is just much more fluid and more in flow with life, which is always changing and inconsistent. Whereas discipline is, to me, mindset wise, it's just totally the opposite. It's like, oh, it's time to do this. We got to do this. We got to stop everything because, you know, it's 4:30 in the morning. You got to get up, even if you're tired, and you got to go work out for that half an hour. And then you sit down and you do your meditation. And it's maybe it was the way I was, you know, maybe so rigidly disciplined that it was incompatible. I don't know. Nobody else has this problem. I guess it's just me.
This is a you thing. This is a Sandra thing. Sounds like a you problem to me. Well, no, I do kind of get what you're saying, but I think that, you know, when the question of balance comes in, I think that the idea then is to find, okay, so for like the hiking, right? For me, it's not a matter of discipline to get up in the morning at 4:30 to get on the road to my awesome hike, because I know that hike is a spiritual practice for me. Nature is how I recharge my batteries. And that's something I wish I would have known way back. I took nature walks for the same reason. I mean, you got to get the kids out, walk the dogs, you know, have an activity. Like, it was kind of similar. I don't think as rigid, but kind of with a similar mindset of, you're just supposed to do it. It's good for you. So you just go do it. And I've really discovered that if I go too long without being outdoors for a while, I lose my center. Like, I don't go as deep into my meditations. I'm not as patient in the real world. There's so much for me that disconnects. So I wonder if that balance is really finding what recharges your batteries. And then if you can find that, and it happens to be something physical, maybe that's the answer. What recharges your batteries? What do you do when you need to refuel? Besides the Netflix binges.
I know. Total isolation.
Yeah.
Total isolation.
All
and
by
it's kind
yourself.
of funny because at kickboxing this morning, the instructor was saying that on Saturday she just could not get herself to do anything. The most she got herself to do was just wash the dishes, and she couldn't do anything. So she called her mom, and she's like, "Oh, I can't do anything." And her mom was like, "You did the dishes. Now just relax on the couch." And she's like, "Yeah, I got mom's permission, so I don't have to do anything." And the next day, she was super productive. And I have found that over and over and over again myself, that if I'm just tired and just don't want to do anything, to give myself permission to just do nothing, to just lay in bed and basically just binge watch whatever the heck's on Netflix and just do nothing. And then the next day, I'm 10 times more productive than I ever would have been if I hadn't just done nothing. So for me, recharging my batteries is, unfortunately, it's isolation. I don't talk to anybody. I don't leave the house. I just become a hermit.
Well, at least you found it. At least you know that that does recharge your batteries. Because for a lot of people, the Netflix binge actually will do the opposite. So they know they need the rest, but sitting alone like that for themselves actually kind of makes them a little grumpy, probably because they're not eating well and not drinking enough water and all the things that go with it. But I've seen a lot of people go, I know that it's not good for me. So at least you've identified that this is something that it does recharge your batteries. And I think, okay, so take the exercise thing out of it. Take even the spirituality thing out of it. I think when we give ourselves permission to take a rest when we need a rest, we're just going to be better at everything we do. And I think, I don't know how it is for men, but I know almost every woman I know has struggled with that. So even if they go, I know I need this rest, I know I need this time to leave the office and take a hike or read the book or do the Netflix binge or whatever it is, they'll do it, but then they have this kind of like, oh yeah, but I do that to myself sometimes. I'll do it anyway, but if it hasn't fallen in that time and space where I've given myself permission to on Saturday when I hike at Herman's Gulch, right? And I think that it's super important that you're even saying you need to take it. You don't need your mom's permission. You don't need your psychologist's permission or your life coach's permission. You need the rest. Take the rest. And we're not culturally allowed, in a sense, to do that.
That's right. That's right. We're expected to constantly be productive, and without even realizing that you may look busy, but your productivity level is just dropping.
Yep. And you're probably making mistakes that you're going to have to go back and do again later. And there's a whole nother loss to productivity, and your frustration levels get high because you have to fix stuff. Like, take the break. Just take the break already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I do love a good nap, though, I have to say. Like, I have no qualms about taking a good nap. If I can, if the schedule allows and I can do it, I will do it in a heartbeat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I love
I haven't been able to take a nap in a long time.
It's one of my most favorite human experiences. It's ridiculous how much I love a good nap, actually.
That's awesome.
Like you said, know what you like, right? What else new? What's going on for you this week?
Oh, well, so interesting thing about the experiment, and I did take your advice, and I did put out a couple of posts on, updating people, telling people about the experiment and then updating people about the experiment. And I found that, and I've heard before, that your ego will find ways to keep you asleep. And It seemed pretty quickly on that I was getting a good handle on the wanting emotions, like really just keeping them at bay. And then I realized that, it just shifted. It shifted to a different path, a much more subtle path, more of an anxiety.
Oh,
so
no.
It was, yes, it's kind of interesting is what I've discovered is when you don't allow yourself to feel, and this isn't a bad thing, this is great news. When you don't allow yourself to feel wanting, then what you end up discovering is that underneath the wanting is kind of like an anxiety that things are not going to go your way.
Interesting.
Just like this just generalized uneasiness, around life. And then I started thinking about that, and I was like, hope then becomes the defense against anxiety. Because as long as you can have hope that things will be better, that things will change, things will be different, then you don't have to face the anxiety of what if it doesn't.
Interesting. I'll have to think about that for a while. I can see how that would really be true. That what's fascinating to me is Because I had a completely different experience. Remember when I said, I put up that call, I'm like, just tell me what to do, and I promise I'll say yes. And that whole walk in faith, I actually felt that anxiety go away. I didn't feel anything come up that there was like, if I'm not in control, if I'm not saying specifically what I want, then things are going to go awry. But now that you've said it in this way, I can see how that could be, I can see how that would be an easy place to get to, because we do feel like if we're not at least ordering from the menu, right? If we're not at least saying, but here's what I want, then how is my subconscious, our connection through our cellular memory, like how is everything going to line up if I'm not putting that in place?
Exactly. And anxiety might be just a strong word, and just because of my background, that's the word I use. But it wasn't like at a clinical level of anxiety. It was more kind of like it's just a dis-ease, just an uneasiness, and just this low level. I mean, it was subtle because I was like, oh yeah, well that experiment went easy. I'm not really feeling much wanting. Then I just realized it was just this non-specific kind of ugh. And then I realized that, if I were to defend against this and not allow myself to feel it, I would be using hope. I would be like, oh, don't worry about it. Things are going to be good. I have hope for the future, that the future is going to improve and get better. And I realized that that's just a technique to not feel the dis-ease.
I think you're onto something with that. I think you're really onto something with that, because I notice for myself personally, I glom onto that big picture all the time. Because, you ask anybody, what would you have told your 15-year-old self, your 25-year-old self, your whatever? And invariably, it's some form of everything's going to turn out okay, right? So if you know that life's a long game and you've got a lot of time, a lot of ups and downs in between, but a lot of time to have things take their proper course, things turn out okay. That's not painless, right? We don't get through without some bumps and bruises, but they turn out okay. And I do notice that I go to that future self a lot of times, just knowing this is temporary, it's not going to last forever. And I never put it in that frame before. That is a defense against the sort of uncomfortableness with just whatever is. I think you're onto something. That's really insightful. I like that. I want to meditate on that. That's so good.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was really interesting. I mean, I went from like being all proud of myself because I mastered this whole energy of wanting. And then I realized, I was like, the ego is a very tricky thing. It's very tricky.
Kidding.
It's going to keep processes in place the best it can and make you think that you're doing just fine. And I think that's how people recreate their reality and don't really make changes. The cover of the book looks different, but the inside's still the same kind of experience.
Right. Yeah. Gosh, that is tricky, isn't it? Because on the surface, that would look like everything's fine. Like you've got the right attitude, that you're in surrender, that you're letting go, that let go, let God, the whole 9 yards. And really, you're still sort of at least manhandling the outcome. You're still saying, in essence, yeah, but I still want it to turn out this way. And it will. And it's just give it time and just play the game and just take the steps rather than, that is a really keen insight. I like that.
Yeah.
I do that more than I realize.
Right. And it makes me kind of realize how important it is to feel what you're feeling.
Uh-huh.
Right? I mean, which is kind of ironic because my whole experiment was about not feeling want.
Well, there's the yin and the yang of it, right? To have it, you have to not have it. To know it, you have to not know it.
Yes, it is the yin and the yang. Because I think in order to remove, energetic blocks with, because we talked about, want equals lack. Right. The definition of want is to lack. And so if I'm constantly putting out to lack in energy, that's exactly what I'm going to get. So I think it is good, the yin side to not allow those feelings, but the yang side to go through the source of those feelings.
Yes.
So that that source doesn't go, oh, well, she just removed that one. Now what am I going to do? I got to replace it with something else.
That's okay. I got a whole box of tricks. We'll just put something else in its place.
Exactly. And still think she's doing great.
Right. She'll feel good about herself. She'll have that at least. Yeah, no kidding. Well, and that really is the true nature of anything that we're going to do with our personal work anyway, isn't it? Is sort of allowing both sides of that to hold that same space, rather than, to your earlier point, having the anxiety and the hope be in opposite places, finding that place where they work together, where they work in concert with one another, rather than just replace, right? Rather than just, here's my now, I'm feeling uncomfortable. Let me call in the hope. Let me put that hope in there. And we're going to push out that discomfort.
Yeah. It's like the Wizard of Oz, our ego is playing Wizard of Oz. It's like, oh, don't look behind the screen because I'm just going to distract you with all these shiny objects, Oh, you took out wanting? That's fine. We're going to distract you with hope and make you feel like, oh yeah, I'm not wanting anything. I'm totally hopeful for the future. I'm not wanting anything, when, hope is just covering up the source of wanting in the first place, which was, what if things don't turn out the way I want them to?
Right. I think that it's all a journey, and really kind of becoming comfortable with, well, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, we don't want to have an emotional attachment to any particular outcome, right? There's the word want, but the goal is to, if we're really truly allowing, then we don't have any end game in mind. We don't have wellness in mind, prosperity in mind, living in a certain place in mind, right? If we truly unattached to any particular outcome, there would be no need for hope. There would be no need for want or will or...
Right. And then that's how the wizard comes in again, because the wizard goes, oh, we're going to make you think that you're allowing by putting in place the feeling of apathy, right? A lot of people become apathetic and think, oh, but I'm allowing whatever happens. I don't care, whatever happens. And that's simply another defense against the anxiety. And I'm just going to use the word anxiety, and you can replace it with whatever word feels better, unease, dis-ease, uncomfortableness. I'm just, lumping it under the term anxiety.
Sure.
But apathy could be a defense against anxiety as well. Like, oh, I'm just going to not care then.
Absolutely. Apathy is one of the go-to coping mechanisms when people are trying to come to terms with anything, right? Well, yeah, I'll just completely detach. And not having an emotional attachment to a particular outcome is different from being apathetic, right? So again, where's that yin and yang? Where are the two things working in concert, where you can be both in a place of surrender and in a place of joy, regardless of what's going on in the right now? And that's...
Yes. Oh my God. I think we're getting down to the key to the law of attraction, because this is a question I've had for years, which is, how do you want something and not want it at the same time?
Yep. And that is the trick, isn't it? Because if you think about it, if you and I have looked at each other manifest things over the years, and we're like, you're a master manifester. That's amazing. And it has always been those things that we've sort of casually said, hey, I wonder if, what it would be like if da-da-da-da-da, right? If this thing happened. Well, then lo and behold, before we have lunch again, this thing has happened. We're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And we forgot we even asked for it. We've relied on each other's reflection to go, do you remember you specifically said you wanted X, Y, and Z? Oh yeah. So there's something to that simultaneously. But okay, so I said something in there though that I think is the trick. And the curiosity, right? I wonder what it would be like. I bet it would be cool. Like, there's a playfulness around it, rather than the expectation of, rather than, oh gosh, it would be so great if this happened. Oh, this would solve my problems. Oh, if only I had, right?
Well, I think you also hit on it in terms of forgetting, because if you forget that you ask for it, you're not sending energy of I want, I want, I want. And
Right.
you're not sending the opposite energy of, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care, which is not really not wanting.
Right.
So you removed both the yin and the yang and given space for it to show up easily.
Yeah. Because there's no energy around telling it how or when it's supposed to show up.
Right. You just backed off of it completely with
Yep.
no defense mechanisms, no shiny objects, nothing to cover up the true source of the dis-ease about what it is that you want.
Right. So how do we want that without wanting it? How do we get to that place where that is just our steady state of affairs?
I have an idea from what we're talking about, and it goes back to just like what you said, the yin and the yang is the yin part, which is to remove the wanting of it, because that's the energy of lacking it.
Right.
So you remove that, then you no longer are attracting the lack of what it is that you want. But then, like with my experiment, like when you remove the lack, what is the defense mechanism that comes to cover up the true source of your wanting in the first place? And you got to find that and accept that part. So for example, the general disease of what if things don't go my way? Well, what if things don't go my way? Let's just dig deep into that scenario. Nothing went my way at all, and process those emotions so I'm okay with it. I'm okay with nothing having gone my way. And then you take the energy out of that. And then there's no more energy. It's the same thing as having forgotten. There's no energy coming from the yin or the yang.
Yeah. It's funny, gosh dang it. I'm hearing you say this. There is actually a chapter in my book about getting okay. Learn to be okay with being homeless, with being jobless, with being sick. Be okay with that worst case scenario and change the energy around the lack. Only I had my ideas, my tools, my book. And in this conversation, I had completely forgotten about it until you brought that up. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, because the only way around is through, right? The only way past is through, and that's true for any uncomfortable anything that we have, whether it's grief, sadness, loss, want, any of it. Yeah. That is an exercise in faith, isn't it? So that's different from hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The word that came through my mind was acceptance.
Yeah.
That acceptance is probably one of the hardest things for people to get to, because there's that defense mechanism of apathy,
Yep.
of indifference,
Denial.
and none of that is acceptance.
Yep. Yeah, that's the tricky thing about the grief cycle in the first place, right? Like we go through it again and again, but that acceptance can also, that feel just like denial. The two are so closely related in the way that they show up in our conscious mind and in our bodies and the way that we react, that it's tricky. It's subtle, really subtle.
Yes, it's very subtle. And it might be the reason why people don't manifest things as well as they could.
Yep.
Is it's hard to tease out where's the difference between apathy, denial, blatant, just disregard for, losing hope and acceptance.
Yeah. Yep. So then what would be the thing? Okay, so if we were to deconstruct this, because you know how it is, right? I mean, there's just certain things that feel like they're in your face all the time. You can't forget them as easily as you can forget some other things you're trying to manifest. So if somebody's got, an obvious illness or a stack of second notices on their counter or a divorce that they're in the middle of, and, whatever that thing that is ever present that they want to not want, they want to forget that they want, whatever that is, right? That process. If we're deconstructing that, what would the practice look like when we have those thoughts come in? if I just had a better lawyer, $50,000 in the bank, whatever, a magical cure for my leg, whatever the thing is, because those thoughts are going to come up all the time. What is the practice then for people to get to that acceptance?
You know what? I hate to sound like I am, pitching or selling, but seriously, honestly, I totally believe that coming to see us is probably the only way. And I'm not trying to like make it sound like I'm selling us or anything like that, because had the beginnings of these thoughts, but it wasn't until verbalizing them to you and hearing them sound back at me and hearing how you hear it and how you're reflecting back to me what you hear, that gets that clarification. And so, I mean, I guess it's a few, we all have our blind spots. I just happen to be able to dissect the underpinnings of wants and seeing the subtleties show up and seeing how I would naturally defend against that. But there could be other blind spots that I have in terms of my emotional reaction to things that my ego might, the Wizard of Oz could convince me that I'm handling it quite well without realizing that, no, you're actually in denial as opposed to acceptance.
Right.
That's why we talk all the time, right? Because we are constantly giving each other this kind of feedback that says, yeah, you're doing great, or no, I'm not quite seeing it the way you see it. So it's hard to do this kind of work in your own head.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And as you know, there's a lot to be said for that shared space, right? When you and I are in a place having a conversation, even one like this, which is actually public, you and I hold a certain energy that makes it really safe to explore, really safe to ask the hard questions, really safe to say, I screwed that up too. I got it wrong again, right? We really want and need that place that is energetically whole and sound. And we can't hold that for ourselves while we're in the muck, because that muck takes us out of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And not everybody wants to explore those feelings, I mean,
No. It's scary. It's hard work.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for example, I'm going to be taking a workshop this weekend called The Daring Way, based on Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly.
Oh, that's going to be so cool.
Well, get this. So I know her stuff is all about shame, and I'm one of those people. I'm like, oh, I don't have shame. I'm not dealing with shame. I've dealt with shame, blah, 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 right? And so, but I'm taking the book, and I'm taking it anyway because, I've had people tell me, you're playing it small. I'm like, okay, well, let me do this and find out how I'm doing this, get other people's perspective. So there's pre-work involved. And in doing the pre-work, she starts talking about how you defend against the feeling of shame so you don't have to feel it. And one of them is, you probably could guess it because you know me well enough, perfectionism.
No way. No. Control, perfect. No,
right?
Don't see it.
So this is my Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
That is like, oh, no. We're not going to allow you to recognize shame because you might actually do something to get rid of it. So we're going to distract you with perfectionism, that you have to always be the best at everything that you do. And you're going to beat yourself up if you're not at this high standard that you set for yourself, that you can forgive other people for, but you can't forgive your own self for.
And then with the false understanding that as long as things are perfect, then there's nothing to be ashamed of, right? There's nothing.
Exactly.
Because it's perfect.
Yes. And it's something I never would have discovered if I hadn't done this pre-work to take this class and had the training that I've had to understand how defense mechanisms work. Because then I'm like, yeah, I have that. And yes, I can be open to the idea that there must be a whole lot of shame hiding on underneath this perfectionism that I still don't even have access to on an emotional level, that this workshop will help me access. Are you there? Did you freeze? Uh-oh, I think I might have lost my partner. Yikes. An example of defense mechanism is not wanting to hear, not wanting to hear the truth and defending against it. So yeah, there's only a certain amount of work that you can do on your own. Not that you can't do anything on your own. Frankly, I think it's really asking yourself over and over again, am I fooling myself with this emotion? If I'm feeling hopeful, am I fooling myself because I don't want to feel the opposite? Am I indifferent, like I don't care? Am I fooling myself because I don't want to feel the emotion of what if I did care? I have had, you know, because of the way I was raised, you know, it was all about you had to be perfect. And I never stopped to ask myself, well, what if this perfectionism is just a nice excuse to not look at where I'm not perfect? Because obviously there is, I'm a human being just like everybody else. I don't get to escape imperfection. So not looking at it and striving for perfection and looking in the direction of how can I do this better and how can I be better and how can I be a better psychologist and a better mother and a better friend and a better XYZ and a better, all this keeps me from looking at where am I not a better friend, a better mother, a better psychologist, etc. So if people are looking for ways to deal with the yin and the yang and remove some of the emotional barriers to manifesting, I think that's probably the first way to go is, you know, what have you been trying to achieve in your life all of this time? What are you doing to try and achieve that? And is it really a distraction from looking at the opposite of acceptance? What happens if you don't ever get it? What's that feeling? Probably not acceptance, probably not okay with not getting what it is that you really, really want. So that's something to look at. Well, we're almost at the top of the hour, and so I guess I will close this off for now. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Really, really appreciate it, and I hope that you subscribe because we're actually on live, and you could be notified of when we come on live. Thanks. Bye. Have a great day.